Hi, and welcome to another episode of Out of Thinaer. My name is Beverly Lwenya, and today we have a very special guest. Joining me today will be Bo Thomas. She is the Director of Product at Thinaer. So we have one of our very own. Welcome, Bo.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited.
I'm so glad that you're here. Yeah, so this will be a pretty good conversation for us to learn more about the product and technical side of Thin Air. So, really looking forward to our conversation. But before we dive in, maybe you can start off by telling us a bit about your background and how you came to be Director of Product at Thin Air.
Sure. So I have certainly bounced around a few areas. I focused on cybersecurity programming in college and then went to the oil and gas industry where I did ETL development, which is basically taking large amounts of data and translating it and transforming it and getting it served up for analytics tools. I did database development, big data development, advanced analytics. And then I think that kind of led me into robotic process automation. So I built an automation team at a company I was at and did the development side and the project management side, and then took that into the consulting world and went around to different customers for my consulting company and helped them get set up with RPA. And that led me to moving from Houston to Dallas at 9 months
Oh,
pregnant
wow.
in the height of the pandemic. So a big shift for sure. And I was really focused on finding the right company where I saw some cool opportunities and just a mission and culture I wanted to be part of. So Thin Air, in the pandemic and being a smaller company at the time, didn't have a lot of open positions, but I was eager to jump on the team however I could. So I actually started out building gateways and shipping orders and built out our supply chain department for a while. And it was a great experience. I got to learn a lot about the hardware side, which would not have come to me as naturally as the software side, given my background. And then as time, more projects opened up and we needed more help in the product and engineering area, which was my true background, I transitioned into that.
That's awesome. So, what areas of Thin Air are you involved in now?
So I don't really help too much with the supply chain order department anymore. When there's sometimes we get really large orders that are rushed at the end of the year. And so I'll, of course, step in and assist anytime we need. So that's mainly my limited involvement there. I'm mostly focused on the product, so Sonar, and that's everything from designing to testing and troubleshooting and just keeping the project moving and making sure we're getting our releases out. And then since we are the company we are and we tackle so much, we all wear a lot of hats, which can be fun. So I also jump on some of the deployments and go on site and help deploy our gateways or swap beacons and batteries. And yeah, and then recently it's actually been kind of fun since we are growing and taking on new avenues. We're also working to grow other areas of the company, including cybersecurity. So I have been helping out the ops team and trying to strengthen some of our cybersecurity practices as well. So I never know what all I'm going to do and what all past jobs and skill sets I'm going to dive into when I start a day of work. But I do love that. It's so fun.
So it looks like you really have your hands full in just different areas of engineering and product. So who is on your team and what are the responsibilities that they have? What does your team do?
So the product and engineering, we kind of work as one large unit. The product side, we handle the designing of Sonar and thinking through How would a user interact with this new feature? What do we need to be prepared for? How do we align these features to upcoming use cases we know our customers are taking on? And so thinking through how the product acts, how it looks, and making it user friendly, modern, and trying to get all of this data that we capture to come across cleanly for all the different use cases. And so that's the one side of product. The other side is the testing. So making sure every time we send out a mobile build or a web build, it is solid and it is ready for our customers to have confidence of it in their production environments. And then we also, as a product team, do the deployments. So going to our customer sites, getting the hardware live so that they're ready to use the software. And then in the engineering side that we work with, we have our developers, back end, front end, mobile, as well as the R&D team. So not only is R&D helping harden and always keep up with our current technology, they're always out there looking at the next thing and testing that and seeing if it's a good fit for Thinaer as well. So a lot of stuff under one hub, but it's a really great team with incredibly talented people that we all come together and get a lot done and have a lot of fun doing it as well.
Yeah, it definitely sounds like it. So shifting more to the product, the actual product, can you give us a bit of an overview of Sonar for those who might not know? What are its capabilities and how do you see it functioning in the marketplace?
Our head of mobile, I think, says it best. It's it's a Swiss Army knife. It does so many things, but at a high level, we're providing insights into your data, helping you track assets, and that can be so many different things for so many different customers. So we have one customer at one of their sites that has very expensive but very small tools that tons of engineers use in different ways, and they are used all day and all night at their 24-hour facility. So it's hard to find a very small tool in a very large facility when it could have been used in every corner of the building. So they use a function in Sonar called breadcrumb trails, and it just shows you breadcrumb trails of where your asset has moved all day. So for them, an asset in this example is just a very small tool, but they can pull up our breadcrumb trails and say, it was checked out of the tool crib at this date and time, and I can't find it. And they can start their time window there and they can see, oh, it stopped at Beverly's desk and then it went over to Bo's desk. And so they can see exactly where their tool has gone. So there's people using really small items that might seem not as important. And then there's people tracking huge machines. And there's people even tracking during the pandemic. We had a customer that was using our beacons on a freezer for COVID vaccines. And they used our triggers, which you can set a parameter like if this beacon falls below or goes above this temperature, that's an issue. I need to know about it. And so when they set that and that happens, we email them, hey, this asset that you wanted to monitor, it's out of your acceptable range. Here's the exact temperature at this time. And so with this fridge that was holding all of those vaccines, they were able to see the temperature is rising and got to get to it right away, saw that someone did not fully close the door, and were able to get the door closed and not waste all of those vaccines. So we have a lot of data, we do a lot of things. And I think when you say asset tracking, people are like, okay, yeah, whatever. But there's so many use cases for different companies and within those companies that's kind of why we call it a Swiss Army knife, because you can cater it to all of these different use cases. And at the end of the day, we always have that data tracked, ready for you to export and analyze with your tools. We have our own analytics options within Sonar. So many things triggering on your data that we are doing that can go so far. And it's just really cool to see all the different ways that it's used.
That's amazing. So you talked about breadcrumb trails and how important that is for a customer to find assets. What other kind of features does Sonar have, and how do you all determine how to, I guess, implement a new feature from ideation to deployment? How do you determine that?
There's a lot of awesome features, including the dashboard. So we've now designed our homepage to where we can say, "Hey Beverly, we want you to pick the things you care about most, whether that's an asset at a whole, or you're like, hey, I want to know the temperature of this room at all times." You can pin that in a chart to your dashboard. You can say, hey, I care about how many of my assets are online in my facility right now. You can pin that to your dashboard. So that's a really cool feature that we released last year where everyone can customize it to what they want to see. But our biggest, to speak to the whole process, our biggest feature recently was upgrading our maps. So since you're tracking these tools, right, usually you're going to want to see them at a facility view as well. So historically, you were able to upload a floor plan of a certain site, and we would call that a map. And you could set up places or kind of zones to show certain areas. But we have now switched to geospatial maps. So if a site is classified, they can still just stay as what we call a static map. So you're not attached to the real world. We have no information about your physical location. So you can stay classified. You can stay off the grid if you'd like. But most of our customers were very excited for and have been loving our geospatial maps. So everything is on the real world map now. So whether you have sites in Florida and New York or just in Texas, you can have them set up where they are in the real world and track your tools now live that way as well. And that is a very big feature that took a lot of effort from a lot of people, but it did kind of show the overarching process of whether it's a very small new feature or an overhaul like that. It starts with a group of us from product and engineering talking about we've got to make this happen. This is why it's so important for us. This is how it's going to be used. What should we consider? And both from a functional, a design, and a technical perspective, we all brainstorm. And on a larger scale like maps, that was several times we would all come and travel into the Dallas headquarters and sit in the conference room for days, mapping it out and talking about it. And then that turns into what we call stories. So a story is just telling the development team, this is what we need to build. This is how it should look. And this is how it should interact for the user. And that is really a very critical part of the process because we need to think through everything, right? So the happy path that we call, let's say Beverly wants to add a zone to her map. Okay, here's all the steps of the happy path of everything goes exactly how we want. How should it interact? There's also the Beverly started to make a zone and then someone came into our office and said, can you pull up this asset? So in the middle of doing that, Beverly switches tabs. What do we do with that data? Do we store it? Should we warn them they're about to lose data? There's so many small decisions in all of the ways that it can happen. So again, product and engineering work together to think through all of that and think through how to handle it. And then the development team will start building it out, of course, reaching back if they have questions. And then they usually get us a first draft, and the product team dives in and we do the happy path. We say, oh, does it work in the perfect scenario? And then we have some fun and we try to break it too and think about what are all the ways that we could trick this and try to make it foolproof. And then from there, we start to incorporate it into the entire Sonar code base and work it up through our environments until it's ready to release to our customers, which usually comes with more documentation in our help center, of course, getting it into our release notes and all of that. So it's a long process for big overhauls. It can be quicker for small ones, but it is a very big collaboration effort throughout the team.
Yeah, I'm sure it is. And you talked about these three aspects, the functional, the design, and the technical aspect. And the dashboard is a great standout feature that has all of those. How do you account for different technical abilities for different users? Let's say at a factory, you might have the plant manager, or you might have an executive who doesn't have as much technical expertise, or you might have a CTO or more or engineer. How do you make sure that everyone is able to use Sonar according to their abilities?
With a tool with so many capabilities and so many diverse users as far as their perspective, like you said, their background, their role, and what they're trying to accomplish, it is a huge consideration we take into mind. Our top priority is always that the feature within Sonar that you are interacting with is user friendly. That's what we want. So that no matter who is working with it, no matter if it's their first day with Sonar or they've been with it for years and they're one of our super users, we want it to be user friendly. We also try to add in a lot of hover help text. So lots of little info icons that are very obvious on our more, I would say, technical features like setting up a trigger to alert on an asset. But also just a lot of places as you hover, you're going to see tons of pop-ups, and it can just be a quick name to clarify, or it can be a full message to give you a little bit more insight. And sometimes it even has a link to take you to our help center to watch videos and read articles and see the screenshots of us walking through what the feature is, what we designed it for, and showing you some use cases of how to implement it. So we try to make sure it's clean, which is why we kind of tuck away some of those hints. We try to make sure it's user friendly and intuitive, but then we also pack in a lot of ways for our more technical users to dive deeper. So you will see, for example, exports everywhere. You can export raw data from things like your asset list. You can export all of your data through our maps feature. And then you can also export smaller sets of data. So if we want to talk about the fridge and seeing like, is that getting left open? Why does that keep getting left open? Is there maybe a piece wrong? Do we need to get some messaging out to a certain shift? You could go to that assets page and you'll see every single beacon attached to it. And then on every single beacon, you can click every one of the, well, we call abilities. So the battery life of the beacon, the temperature, the humidity, vibration, voltage, orientation, all of that. You can click those depending on what your beacon is set up for. And we bring up graphs that show you. So it's very easy to pan, normalize the data, see trends, and you can export that as an image. So that let's say you wanted to send it to your boss. Hey, here's the image to show all the dips of the time our temperature got in a scary range in the last 7 days. You can also export the data behind the graph. So it's there. We have so many ways for people to dive deeper and use our more technical features. But there's also just the fact that you can just be like, oh, that graph is very visual and easy to use, and use the more intuitive, more functional, less technical version of it. And then we have our most technical users, which we pair with to help them get hooked up to the API to do even deeper initiatives there as well. So overall, lots of helpful hints, lots of focusing on keep it intuitive, keep it clean, but have all of these options ready for people to grab the deep data and the technical side of it, and then they can analyze it further from there.
It's really interesting to hear about how granular you can get with the data and just the different aspects of or metrics that can be measured with Sonar. So I guess pulling on that thread, how um, and just kind of talking about how Sonar is deployed in the real world. What have you seen when you talk to customers on site? in terms of how they're using Sonar for real-time operational data. So how are they employing that in the real world?
There's so many scenarios by area, depending on what they're doing. For example, there's some, I would say, less involved use cases where there are customers that have property that they no longer are using specifically. And by property, I mean machines or parts. But due to contracts, they might be audited at a certain interval or at a surprise time. And they need to prove at that moment, whether it's a surprise or a planned interval, what is in which place and prove, hey, it hasn't moved. It's in our contract to keep it located here at this secure facility. Here's all the data to show that. So that's a use case I think people can kind of think doesn't sound as flashy, right? So you're not tracking the breadcrumb trails every day to see where it went, but it's very important. So there are some of the more unexpected surprise options like that. I have also seen people that have these very complex machines that I wish I could understand all the details of how they work. But for example, it's one machine and you look at it and you're like, you have 8 beacons just on the front of this machine. And you're like, do you guys just really like beacons? And they're like, well, this part of the machine right behind it is the compressor. So I want to know the vibration frequency going on because I can tell in Sonar by that frequency if that piece is about to go out and I can get ahead of it instead of letting it break and then we don't have access to the machine. And they can say, and this over here is close to the power source. So I care about the temperature and I want to be very precise that it's in this exact spot so I can monitor if it's going to overheat. So it's very interesting to see how we know our beacons can do so much and then you pair them with sonar and the capabilities go on, but it's so cool to see the people who have these specific needs that I just wouldn't have thought of and seeing them use our beacons and sonar to get ahead of a very important equipment malfunction that would obviously affect manufacturing and keep going down the line. It's going to affect your cost and your customers and everything like that. So, yeah, some long term stuff that's really cool, long term storage items, and very technical, very important machines, and trying to have beacons over every important section to see are they performing well? Do we have any concerns with this machine for maintenance?
Wow, it seems like there's a lot of business value that Sonar adds to different companies and organizations. So I guess switching gears a bit to the future of Sonar, are there any upcoming features or developments that you're expecting down the line?
Lots of very exciting stuff coming our way. We are actively working we've talked about a lot of these exports where you can get data out of Sonar, and there's so much value in that data. But we also know so many people are wanting to use not only analytics tools, but now AI tools to dive into that data and get insights quickly. So we are working to adjust our exports and how a user can generate those exports so that they more smoothly feed in to that company's AI tools to set them up to have all this data that we are procuring and having ready for them. And all they have to do is follow the export process, feed it into AI, and suddenly they have these next level insights that are going to make a big difference for them. So that's one item. And the other item is continuing improving our maps functionality. So a lot of cool stuff on the roadmap, but one thing I think that a lot of people are really going to like is since we are now on the real world globe, we are going to soon have the ability to zoom out. So let's say I work at HQ Office 1 in Richardson and you work at HQ Office 2 in Houston. You'll be able to not only just see will not only be able to see just my map, but we could zoom out and see here's Bo and Richardson and here's Beverly and Houston at our different sites. And you could say, hey, Bo, I'm sending this really important piece of equipment on this truck. And these are the gateways, the cellular gateways on the truck. These are the beacons on the equipment. So can your team just keep an eye on it until it safely arrives to your facility? And with that cellular equipment, we could watch the truck drive from Beverly's site in Houston to my site in Richardson. So much opportunity coming at with getting to this globe real world placement of maps. And we have some really cool features like that we are now building since we have that back end capability.
Oh, that's awesome. That's really amazing to be able to get that tracking across maps. I see a lot of implications for that. And last question. So, big picture, looking at the next 5 years, what are you most excited about in the IoT industry? And I guess what Sonar can possibly do in the future? Like, just kind of like thinking big, putting your sci-fi hat on. What do you think is possible in the next 5 years?
Kind of pulling from my background, I've seen companies spend a lot of time and effort trying to automate processes that are either incredibly manual and or are long, take a long time to accomplish. And with advances in, of course, AI, but also what that brings to automation tools and how it's going to make it a lot more accessible to automate, for you don't have to have a full development team handling that. It's going to open it up to who can make that happen and who can support it. So I think when you have a tool like Sonar that is monitoring your data across all of these opportunities that we've talked about, it really makes your potential to automate those lengthy processes that might be delaying you having information at a critical time or freeing up your team to do the more critical thinking tasks. I just think when you consider where we're going with AI and RPA and you have a tool like Sonar deployed, it's going to open up so many opportunities across, I mean, every department in a company.
Yeah, definitely. It looks like the future is bright for Sonar and IoT and just, again, just really supporting all the businesses and companies that need this kind of tool and operational insight within their work stream. So very excited to see that happening. Thank you so much, Bo, for joining us and just sharing with us a bit of what goes on behind the scenes on the engineering and product side of Thin Air. So glad to have you, and hopefully we'll have you back soon.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
And thank you so much for joining us at home. This is Beverly Lwenya once again from Out of Thin Air podcast. We're so happy that you stay tuned in and just are here to help us continue to talk more about the wonderful world of IoT and operational data and just continue to give you the insights that you need. So stay tuned. Don't forget to like and subscribe the video and share with those who might be interested. Until next time, talk to you soon. Bye.